Let's talk some of the biggest kind of hiccups, issues I see when people are thinking about their takeaway in the golf swing. Probably one of the most common swing thoughts, isn't it? How you take that club away, what it does, what it's causing, all those kind of ideas. Let's talk to you about some of the biggest pitfalls I see in the golf takeaway of students over 20 plus years of coaching, and give you some ideas of how to manage any of the issues you might be seeing. Issue number one, adding loft, fanning the club open in the takeaway. So if we establish a takeaway as from the club on the ground to around first parallel, what we tend to see with lots of golfers, very common idea or movement that I see is them fanning, turning, twisting this club up to the sky. Now what this tends to do is it encourages you to have a lot of loft on the golf club. So by twisting it too much this way as you take it back, yes, it can point it to the right, but it isn't anywhere yet because it's not delivered. But what it is it's definitely encouraging quite a lot of loft, or you having to now manage a lot of loft. And the patterns we see from these kind of takeaways is definitely those impacts where people are having to try to recover that loft, recover the angle of the face, flicking forwards of the club, even leaning back to try and get that club to overtake, to allow that head to somehow get the ball near their target or launch in the direction they want it to go. Because it's very simple. If I twist the club this way and deliver, yes, the face is pointing to the right with a lot of loft, so I can put twists and turns in to compensate that, but what lots of golfers are doing is simply pulling that handle back, trying to get that club head to overtake, to get that leading edge somewhere in a position to deliver the face for a directional shot. Biggest causes of this fanning, twisting open often comes from grip. If your hold is very weak, so too far as I look as a right-hand golfer round towards my lead foot, my front side, so over to the left as I look down, this really does encourage these kind of turns and twists as you start that club back. So the first port of call I would be checking, how many knuckles are we seeing on this lead hand? Let's get a good 2 or 3. If you're a one knuckle player, this is a cause of it. Right hand V, thumb and first finger, is it coming up towards your right shoulder? Or is it very far over, causing a weaker hold and in turn some twisting of that face? Now if your grip's in a more neutral position and you still have this desire to really rotate this face, try and turn that loft up to the sky, simple little drills that you can do to try and manage that. As you take that club back, just feel like it's staring at the ball for a lot longer. Feel the difference in your forearms, in your wrists, as you point that club more at the ball for longer to allow it to get first parallel, because ideally you want this leading edge somewhere kind of on your spine angle. If anything, I'm a bigger fan of it turning slightly more down to the angle. Adding loft, adding turn up to the face, as a general rule for golfers, gets them in a lot of mess down at impact. High right shots, fat spins, those kind of ideas. Another simple drill to feel the different rotations in that takeaway. Just get the butt end of the club just above your right thigh, so just into my belt buckle here, but in line with, say, right knee, and have a nice straight line as you start on. Right hand on the club only, so trail hand on the club only. Just rotate your body and feel that club just turn with your right side, and then let it just part off to hit that first parallel. You're going to feel that blade of that club pointing more down to the ground. As soon as you start putting twists, so around the axis of this shaft into this takeaway, you're really going to feel that in your lower or upper thigh, lower tummy, and you're going to hopefully start to isolate that feeling. Do it with 2 hands, put it back in, feel that no rotation around the angle of the shaft, just turning it back to let it part for that first parallel, and then again putting both hands on and trying to replicate that idea into a golf shot. Issues number 2. This one is much more common than people realize. So as I take the club away from my ball, there's a certain pressure shift in my body. There's a certain sinking of my body movement that allows me to turn it away to deliver the club, hopefully in the most constructive way I can. What I see a lot of golfers doing is making a backswing, whereas they start the club back, so to push the club back that way, they go this way. So it's more of a left shoulder down and forward almost as the club goes back, loading up pressures on lead foot, What this tends to do is get people turning in such a way that hitting the ball now, you're either ahead of the ball a long way, which can cause long right shots. You've got the handle way ahead of the head, which leaves the face or makes it very hard to get the face back to where you want it. That requires lots of twists to manage that lean. Or what happens as they turn ahead of the ball, downswing now, they have to start coming back for it and then trying to get back up for it, often leading in kind of duffs. So there's fat shots, fin shots as well. It's a really common problem, and I'm really seeing it more as I measure people on my 3D Swing Catalyst force plate here. I'm watching people move this way as they hit the shot. So I'm going to do 2 shots and show you. So I'm going to do the first one where I go forwards as I take the club back. I mean, I really feel I have to counter that on the way down. It feels so awkward. And then I'm just going to do my normal swing here, where I feel as I start the backswing, the takeaway, I'm moving on to my right side before recentering to hit the ball. Let's show you some of those movements in the takeaway. So I've just put this line here on my lead side of my head, so my left side. You can see as I push back, I want to load or push myself forwards. And what that does is it keeps me really centered for a long time on my backswing. You can see at this stage, I'm kind of like, well, I'm 60% on my trail foot because I'm actually going to push forwards back onto my lead side a bit more. And then top of my backswing, you see I'm ahead of the ball. I've now got 70% of my weight on my pressure on my front foot. And now trying to hit this ball from here is like a big pull back to try and get some contacts. Now, if we compare this to my more regular move, what you're going to see is as I take the club back, there's a big movement into my right side. I'm already 72% pressure onto my trail side at this point. I mean, everything's moving to my right. It's moving away from the target. Arms, I'm turning that way, the club's going out that way. I'm starting to brace up on my right foot to take that turn. And then as I get to the top of the backswing, there's a bit more recentering. We're 60-40 to allow me to now be just slightly behind that ball to turn up to it and through. So starting that backswing and moving ahead of the ball, which I get, you're trying to move this way. I mean, it is a way to shove that club back. I get it. It's just not a way you'll find many good players do it, because you're thinking of your impact position as soon as you start moving this way. It's going to be so challenging, and it's a pattern I see with golfers. Great little drill to stop this if you've got this kind of idea going on. You could see from that line on the camera there I was moving forward for you to check, is I can start a few swings where I start ahead of the ball. So just push that head forwards and then go back, letting your club go back, add your weight to your pressure, move onto your right side to then come through. I do this drill with students and I find they hit a few funny shots, but it certainly changes the order of how they move their pressures in the backswing, allowing them not to be so stuck ahead of the ball, and often just results in such, when they get the feel of the drill, cleaner, more neutral strikes, rather than the rescue kind of package they're always throwing down at that ball. Making sure your pressures in the ground are helping you deliver that club. That's so important. This is one I see a lot of students get very wrong. Next fault we see, this one's common also, but it manifests itself out in many different shots, where we see lots of people turning the face up to the sky in the backswing. We equally see people turning that face too far down to the ground. Now, where I'm a bigger fan of this movement, XF's turning the face down to the ground compromises loft, which requires very big corrections with handle, leans, those kind of ideas down at impact. And the way people recover this often, so what you'll find, good players who get very turned down to the ground first parallel impact, takeaway, their impacts will result in heavy rotations and a little bit of hold off. That's the stronger way to manage this issue. But what I see from amateurs, they're trying to manage that face going left. So what they do, we see lots of sliders. This creates very messy impacts, blocks, overturns. I also see people from this turn down to the ground position get very slicey. So what happens is they manage it by raising that handle up and left and get the path moving more left than the face. And then they just results in massive slices. People who do closed face, less lofted takeaways and turn it into slices, you give them a driver and they can't handle it. The handle gets so high, we start seeing massive curves. Easy way to start managing this. First point of call again would be back to the grip. Are you seeing all 4 knuckles? Is your right hand far too far under the club, which is creating this turn. Make sure your 2 to 3 knuckles lead hand. Right hand, that V goes somewhere up towards your right shoulder. If you've got a more neutral grip, but you're still finding the desire to really turn that club down to the ground and add all your slides or raising handle deliveries, the next thing you can really start to look at is how you move your trail arm. So your right arm for me as a right-handed golfer. What we tend to see with people who want to get that club pointing down at the ground is the trail arm just not wanting to rotate, not wanting to move this way in the backswing, wanting to basically just part very early from the right side, keeping that right hand on top of the club. We then tend to see these kind of very face up to the sky backswings, elbows out, kind of stuffed out behind them. So no desire to get any rotation in this trail arm and shoulder. So simple drill to try and manage that face in your takeaway if you're turning it too far down to the ground. Simply get your right hand, palm it to the target in front of you on the left side of the club, and then as you take your backswing, simply palm it off to the right side so it's now kind of pointing at a right angle to the target line. What this drill will do is it'll allow you to feel the right arm folding, it'll allow you to feel how the right arm wants to start rotating back this way much more on the backswing, and it'll allow you to feel how that face should be moving as it starts back. Your movement this way is going to be really noticeable with the palm pointing down at the ground. So again, with any drill, try and bleed it into your shots, otherwise they become a bit abstract. So take your more neutral grip, just palm it on the lead side, left side of the club, point it out to this camera on the right hand wall here for me, and then come down into a shot quick as you can. Work that into a shot. You can see how I've done it too much, look, just to get that movement off to the right as I manage the face. Getting an idea of how that trail arm rotates in relationship to the face can give you really good levels of control with irons, wedges and drivers. It really bleeds through all the clubs. And my last tip, and possibly the most important that relates to all of these and any other tips you watch, trying to improve or change your takeaway, different angles, wherever the club might go. So if you're someone who brings it too far inside or picks it too far outside, the big question you've always got to relate it to, and if you're not doing this, please start doing it, is how does that relate to impact? You'll be amazed at the amount of students over the years that I've coached that say, oh, I take the club too far inside as I take the club back. It gets stuck behind me. And I say, oh, okay, that's cool. So what shot does that cause and what does that do to impact? And they don't have an answer. They just have seen their swing and it's here. Textbook, we want it more, say, in line with your line of your feet. And they don't like where that looks. They're not relating it to impact. So what they're actually doing is just working on pretty pictures. You've got to make sure that whatever you're doing with all these angles, it relates to an impact improvement. If it's not, it's questionable what you're working on. So think of themes in your swing. Let me just do a couple of swings. I'm going to aim everything straight, and now I'm going to take this club what is too far inside on the backswing and just show you my numbers. So there's a shot. It's a slight draw, but it's left side of the green. If we just show you that one, my path was out to win 0.7. Face slightly closed, slight toe hit, slight toe in the air, 5 down. But my path was not in to out. Obviously a common idea is you take it too far in here, it makes you swing too far out there. I'm going to do another swing now where I pick this club up, more what we call stuffed on the outside, something lots of people would try and fix. And look, it's a little fade. So where the inside one had a little draw, that had a little fade. So in theory, it's following the patterns, isn't it? My path's now in to out 0.7. Biggest influence on those two shots was how I managed the face. And if you give me enough shots, I'll manage the face however I want. The influence on the path was actually contrary. It was the opposite to the directions this club was swinging on. Now, for me, someone who has, say, a relatively textbook movement, if I make a swing where I'm relatively straight back, so I am the textbook in line with my feet line, yes, I get, subject to the face control, my pass will be kind of slightly across depending on what shot I want to hit, but straightish. So 1.2 out to in. I'm trying to hit a little fade, so that's my straight, that's my 0 point at the moment with this club. Now if I want to hit a bigger cut, I'm going to change my aim. So now in turn, my position to this camera will change. That's the other thing you've got to bear in mind, a static camera. But I will feel like I'm swinging a bit more across the ball, and I'm going to set that theme with a takeaway, push it out to pull it in. It's something I'll use as a weapon to try and curve the ball, and then vice versa. If I was trying to draw it, I would aim more to the right. Again, this takeaway, relatively parallel to my feet, but will look very different on that camera to if I'm aiming to the left, something to bear in mind. But yes, I will persuade it a bit more behind me to try and push it out, because it follows my patterns. If it doesn't for you, these are things you've got to be thinking about and trying to make sure that everything you're doing in these movements relates to what happens down there. So for me, aiming left, feeling like I'm swinging across it, gives me a near 10 out to in path, giving me bigger curvature with that iron. Fixing this position on its own, isolated, and not relating it to what happens down here, not relating it to what happens when you strike the ball in your patterns of shots, is such a common problem I see with golfers over the years. It's traditional coaching, I think, has bred it so much, and YouTube videos still now breed it. Please, 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 just make sure whatever you're working on in those takeaway ideas, relate them to impact. As you saw, as I went through each one, I was trying to relate it as much as I can to patterns of impacts I see from those positions. But remember, you're not all the same. You're individuals. You work it out in different ways. Yes, there are groups that work it out in that way. These are the patterns we see, but not everyone will work it out that way. Make sure you get a one-to-one lesson, get on a launch monitor, monitor where these positions, these changes in face and direction of paths of takeaway, see how they relate to your impact, and make yourself a better golfer. Thanks for watching, everybody. Let me know if this helps. If you want to see more videos along these lines, in those comments down below, let me know if it's something you've worked on, takeaway with great success, or you've not gone anywhere. I mean, joking aside, I know some golfers who've worked on their takeaways for 20 years, and I just think, in those 20 years, you'd think they'd have got it right by now. Understanding the matchups of those movements that you make early on, from grips like we're relating to, and impacts. That's where the real answers lie for your better games. Thanks for watching. Post those comments down below. Hit that thumbs up button if you haven't hit that thumbs up button already down there if you like the video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Loads of free content on its way.